welcome to Protecting Our Kids, a discussion focusing on public safety, especially involving our children as the school year begins. There's heightened awareness of this issue following the kidnapping and murder of 17-year-old Norma Lopez in Moreno Valley in July as she walked to a friend's house after a morning summer school class. We've just had a discussion with three safety advocates from Moreno Valley, and now we are joined by two Press Enterprise reporters, Lori Lucas and John Asbury, and we're going to talk more about the community, and in this particular we'll start with the case itself. John, you've been covering the investigation of this case. What is the status of the reward in the investigation?
Police still have no suspects. They continue to offer a $35,000 reward, but at this point they're still looking for exactly who did this and who's out there. At this point they believe it was likely a stranger abduction, somebody who Norma didn't know and somebody who could have randomly abducted her prior to her killing.
Sure. Now, she was walking alone in a fairly remote field, but police have not released much information about the case in particular, because why?
Well, they have to keep it close to their vest because certain details might be released that only the killer and investigators know. So as they're searching for suspects and certain information comes to light, that will help them narrow down the list as to who's a possible suspect, and also those who might be coming forward and saying they know something, whether it's legitimate or not.
Mm-hmm. Now, how is this case different from other cases that you've covered involving violence of young people?
This case is one that it's really captured the community's attention because, as law enforcement have said, it's really every parent's worst nightmare. It's the possibility that you have a young girl walking alone doing the right thing and randomly taken. It could happen to anybody. And when you look at cases like this, or the Chelsea King case where John Gardner abducted her near San Diego, it really strikes fear that who's next? Now, hopefully no one, but police are cautioning parents don't need to lock up their children. They just need to be more aware and watch out for their surroundings.
Right. Now, Lori, tell us about what you've observed in the community in covering, because you cover Moreno Valley,
right.
As you've covered several stories related to this case, and also a story today on the beginning of school year.
Well, excuse me, the community does seem to be rallying and uniting to do everything possible. And the school district, for example, 36,000 kids are going back to school tomorrow. They're hammering away the message about safety, which is something they do every year, but now there's a renewed vigor, and there are packets going out and assemblies and classroom emphasis at the elementary level. And then a lot of community members are joining forces. There are free self-defense classes for any girl over 13. There's one coming up on August 21st at the Taylor Martial Arts School. There's ride sharing, there's neighborhood watches, there are walking groups. The city hall officials have gotten involved with offering rewards. Excuse me. Mayor Bonnie Flickinger has come out with a pledge teenage girls can take and a button with Norma's picture on it. So it's been very impressive.
Sure, and unfortunately, a tragedy, but also the increased awareness. I mean, I imagine there's just such a heightened focus on safety that this will have a lasting impression on a lot of kids. Talk about what you've seen in terms of how the high school age people have reacted, some of the things they've done, and what you've seen.
Yes, I'm finding that teenagers are scared, but they're also determined to protect themselves. And I interviewed girls who are no longer walking to school, excuse me, even though it's only a few blocks, and they're taking rides everywhere. They're not hanging out at the malls. I'm hearing that the malls are a lot quieter. that a lot of businesses have actually suffered because the kids aren't going there after dark to hang out. And mothers are hovering as much as possible, taking their kids to and from school. Julianne Stewart Cleveland is trying to start teen music concerts every Friday, free concerts, to get the kids off the street. So I'm interested to see how long this change will last.
And she's organizing even carpools, trying to help people who might not otherwise be able to take their kids to school, to allow kids to have rides to school. But John, you alluded to this a moment ago. The answer isn't to, never let your kids leave the house. There's no reason why you can't go to the mall or why you can't walk to school, but maybe it's implementing a buddy system, or maybe it's just a different set of procedures that you go through as a parent. I mean, talk a little bit more about what the public safety agencies have to say about these issues.
Sure, and police have said that while you need to be aware of your surroundings, and it may not be a good idea to be walking alone at night, or in this case, even during the day home from school, you still have to live your lives. The community in panic is not going to fix anything. Just being cautious and aware that these people are out there and this could happen. It's a matter of, watching out for your children and making sure that they are with a friend, making sure that they do have a safe ride home.
Now, and we were talking earlier, the day that Norma's body was found, within 2 hours there were 5,000 people at a vigil at the high school stadium.
Sure.
So, go ahead.
I think that speaks to the way that the community has bonded. We had an afternoon news conference identifying her as being found the day before, and through text messages, through Facebook, some 5,000 people had descended on Valley View High School at the football field, where they had vigils, they had music, they had prayers, and just sharing stories of Norma to bond the community together, to say that we're not going to let this destroy our community. We're going to fight back.
So in the reporting for your story today, talking about the return of the school year, does this sound like it could even be some sort of tipping point, if you will, in terms of steps that parents are willing to take or go to, or community watch groups?
Well, I'll be interested in following that myself. Sometimes people get all revved up and then the momentum wanes if this case becomes very cold. I'm wondering how long this will persist with the heightened safety, the vigilance. So, I mean, it could be a sea change, but it'll be something I'll be watching.
Sure, but violence is not new to this area. Obviously, and our previous panelists talked about it as well, where you've had gang issues in Moreno Valley, not just Moreno Valley, obviously other surrounding communities as well, but in the schools as well. So it's just like it's another layer of concern. So in a way, it's another opportunity to talk with, within the community about how do we resolve these issues.
Sure. And Moreno Valley especially has taken a lot of actions toward its crime. Back in 2006, there was a spike in crime. In the late 90s, there was heightened gang activities. But over the last few years, they've added police officers every year, and the crime rate, I believe last year, was the lowest on the city's history. And so, while this could happen anywhere, as we saw in Poway in northern San Diego County, you just have to be aware that this is out there.
So have either of you heard of growing efforts to have neighborhood watch groups elsewhere in the Inland Empire?
I know that the people have commented, this isn't just Moreno Valley, that we need to be aware for all our children, that in Riverside, in Hemet, in Temecula, that you have these concerns, and while efforts are still slow going, I know that the discussions are happening.
Right. How about Moreno Valley? What's next in terms of how this community might react in this situation? There's still no killer's been identified or found.
Well, John, what are you hearing?
Well, as far as the investigation goes, I mean, police are warning, yes, there's a killer out there. And for those reasons, you need to take these precautions. But the community needs to be patient. It's been 3 weeks since Norma's body was found. That's in no way a cold case. That a lot of this investigation is going to be taking place in laboratories, in street interviews, and police are still receiving tips daily. Until those leads dry up and they have nothing else to go on, that's when it turns cold. But that's still several months down the road, if that. Mm-hmm. And we've got to remember that Anthony Martinez, the 10-year-old boy who was kidnapped in Beaumont in 1997, it took 8 years until they found Joseph Duncan as his admitted killer when Duncan's fingerprint was found on a piece of duct tape.
That's an excellent point, right. Yeah. Now, how about from the school perspective? Now, having this happen weeks before school starts makes for an interesting scenario.
Yeah. Well, I know tomorrow they will have increased police presence. They will have more patrol officers. I think even people undercover. A lot of volunteers. I bet there are a lot of parents walking their kids walking with other kids. And
are they concerned that some people won't send their kids to school?
Well, yes, they are. So they sent out recorded phone messages to all 36,000 students reminding them school starts Wednesday, how important it is to be there. You can't miss any day of instruction if you want to keep up with the curriculum, and also the safety message. So and they've had a lot of what they call in-service meetings with administration and staff, talking to them, how are they going to deliver the message to the students about safety and the importance of showing up. So at least this week there will be, I don't think anything could happen this week untoward.
Sure. So how does normalcy return? What is normalcy going to look like now, and how might it be different in Moreno Valley than before?
Well, it was amazing that the day after the vigil, where the community came together, kids were still going to summer school classes. They signed cards for Norma's family, and they talked a little bit about safety in classes. But after a little bit, they resumed that instruction. They resumed their classes, and I mean, there's a lot of these kids who still have to walk home from school just because of their parents' jobs and where they live. And it's about not being afraid to live your life.
Lori, any closing comments?
Well, it'll be an interesting year to watch. I don't have any predictions. I suspect, though, that things will resume to status quo, and as the year wears on, and it just depends what happens with this case.
Certainly be very interesting.
But I think it's going to be very hard to maintain this.
Right.
Squadrons of walkers, but you never know.
Sure. And we'll be following it here on PE.com and in the pages of the Press Enterprise as well. I want to thank John Asbury and Lori Lucas of the Press Enterprise. I'm Nels Jensen with PE.com.